episode 64. Got my friend Lovey Reid. Welcome to my show, Lovey.
Hi, Evan. Super excited.
Yeah, I see that. Can you let the listeners and audience know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. My name is Lovey with one L, not lovely, just Lovey. Um, yeah, I am in my mid 20s. I'm a 20 something here in the GTA. I just got married very recently. I am a Christian. I'm a creative. I work in events and communications. I work both corporate life and freelance. And yeah, I'm a pretty interesting human. I come from a pretty unique background. I'm American, Canadian, Jamaican. So I'm an amalgamation of
Ooh.
things. Um, so my mom is American and my dad was Canadian, Jamaican.
Hey,
Um,
let's dive
yeah.
into memory lane then. Let's talk about a little bit of, growing up, struggles, hardships.
Yeah. So that's actually a really interesting point because I've been thinking about this all day.
Oh,
Uh,
wow, okay.
yeah, I have been. I've been reflecting on how far I've come from those struggles and hardships to the point where sometimes you move so far away that you forget where you came from and you forget the things that you overcame. But also before talking about struggles and hardships, I also was like, I really want to honor my parents too. Like I don't want it to sound like my parents didn't do their best
Yeah.
and put me in like whatever. Because growing up, I can look back and see there were struggles and hardships, but growing up, it was just like the norm. I was so loved and cared for that I didn't really feel things. But yeah, struggles and hardships. So growing up, I grew up in the States. I was born in the States. My father and mother both met in Florida. My dad was someone that was, kind of out in the streets. Uh,
Mm.
and so, yeah, he ended up moving to Canada. And so when I was the young age of 5, my mom fell in love with this man and said, I'm going to. And so it was a whole thing where my grandmother didn't necessarily trust me there. I grew up in a really tight knit community, like called Tangelo Park, aka known as the Hood. So I grew up in the hood. I grew up in the streets. When I was young, I remember when I was going to school, I started stealing when I was
Ooh.
very young. And it was just this mindset of like, if I know I can get away with it, I will. And I had that in my brain from very young. So when I was in Florida, I definitely did get in some trouble, and I can see the like influences of that environment and what they could have had on me in terms of like my ethics and doing things
Yeah.
like stealing, stealing in little increments and how it got bigger, and then lying and how it multiply and fighting. And so that was one of the reasons my mom didn't really hesitate to move and to try something new, because she had this little young baby and that she's already seeing the influences of this environment on her. And so she brought me here to Canada, and it was rough for me when I first started. When I came here, so I did like pre-K in the States, which is very much an American thing. And then when I came,
Okay.
yeah, you're in pre-K for like 2 years, and then you would go to kindergarten, whereas here you do like JK, SK.
Yeah,
Moral
yeah.
is,
Yeah,
when
those
I came
jazz.
here, they sent me to the
Yeah.
first grade, and it was complete culture shock for a very young me. Um, we came here. My parents didn't have a lot of money. We lived in an abandoned home in Stouffville for a bit of time. And then we moved into a basement apartment where I had my first dealings with racism before I was at the age of 10. The people that we lived under, I didn't really realize until as I got older. My parents kind of re-explained it to me that we weren't really well liked when we were there.
Oh,
Uh, my
wow.
parents were constantly like mistreated and shaded. My mother, who had this degree in education, was a teacher for many years in the States. When she came here, couldn't get a job, ended up working at a laundromat, and then working at, essentially, I remember going to like this bar or restaurant, and she would like mop and clean and do stuff like that. And she did that for a while when I was in the first grade. And then my dad would drive for like an hour and a half to Newmarket, and he worked at like a telecom place kind of thing. So my parents really were just working really hard to make it work. And I'm talking like not just working, like 12-hour days. And so me being an only child, I found my independence fairly quickly, especially
Yeah.
in the environment. I very much became just me, to the point where at school I didn't talk for like my whole first year. I did not talk at school, to the point where my teachers and the principals thought I was mute. And so they like forced my mom to like get me tested and like make sure that I was okay. But my mom didn't realize, because at home I was normal,
Yeah. Oh,
fine, I was
yeah.
regular. I spoke when spoken to. And my mom just saw that as like I was just an independent kid. I was in my shell. My mom would bring me where she'd bring me to work with her. I'd go do my thing in the corner and I would just live. And when I got to school, I didn't really feel accepted. I felt so different. I didn't understand the culture and the people around me. Like, I remember my first time seeing like a Chinese person and I was so confused, because it was just in
Yeah.
the States, it wasn't very diverse, right? It was
Yeah.
just
Okay.
Black people, white people, and like Hispanics. And that
Yeah,
was
that
all
was it.
I
Yeah.
knew. So that was my first feeling of like not belonging very young. And then there were things where the people above us slashed the tires of our car one day. And like, I didn't really register what happened, but I sort of, in my young mind, was kind of witnessing the things around me and the emotion that was happening, but I didn't know the story. But now growing up, to think like that was my dad's way to get to work, which meant that was his way to make money,
Yeah.
right?
Ends
Who
meet.
are already struggling. That's that's our, it's not easy to just buy a car or replace tires when you're fighting to eat and take care of your kid and pay your rent and stuff. So yeah, that became an eye opener. But when I look back on my childhood and I look back on those situations, I don't remember all of that. I remember my parent in like living in an abandoned home. I remember my parents getting like a bin, like a moving bin that you stuff stuff in, pouring
Yeah.
hot water and cold water, and making a fun bubble bath for me on weekends. I remember, coming home to like surprise teddy bears, and like, just doing fun games. My mom was a teacher, so we always did like little like educational activities.
Mm.
I don't remember, I don't just remember struggle when I look back. I do remember the dark times, but I also remember the
Good
shine,
times.
the
Yeah.
good days. But yeah, that was just some of them. Again, like struggling, like with, I wouldn't say poverty, but just struggling with money, just hustling.
Yeah.
Like parents constantly finding jobs. My parents worked all the time. When we did finally get an apartment, from a very young age, from the second grade, I was walking home alone, and that's because
Mm.
both my parents had to work long days, right? Long
Yeah.
shifts. School ends at 3 o'clock, no one's home. So I know my parents would get me into school. I remember like my mom coaching me on the walk home and making sure I knew the way to get home. I knew what to do, what not to do. Sometimes I would have like babysitters or people in the neighborhood that would look
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
me. And even then, I had so many instances where I just never felt like I belonged, even when it was in like daycare, like feeling left behind. I used to have like there was this older kid that was once supposed to walk me home, and they would leave me and think it was funny. And that's where that independence came from, where I knew my way home and I knew how to get there, and I would, right? Even if someone else who is supposed to look out for me would abandon me, I grew up with this strong, not just independence, but like street smarts. And it just, I had to be strong and mature from a
Yeah.
very age. And I've always been a little mature, but always very silly and a fun kind of kid.
Yeah. 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 I see that with your events
Yeah,
and
yeah, for
creating those
sure.
things.
Yeah, so those were some of them. My peak, my best time was in the third grade. I finally had friends. I fit in. There were other Black people. I was understanding my environment. And then we moved again. And, like first I got suspended again for fighting. And then we moved and all these things happened. Yeah. I'm just trying to like
Oh,
fast
it's
forward and
okay.
give you
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
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 Moral of the story, one of the hardest hardships that I talk about in like my testimonies and stuff too is at the age of 16, essentially I dealt with depression from like, I can't even say 16, but from the 8th grade up until like 9 or 10, I struggled really hard with just loving myself. I was really in a really dark place where I hated who I was. And I struggled with that on my own for so long. I was bullied from when I moved to Ajax from the 6th grade until the 8th grade. I remember that my first day in Ajax, I went to Lincoln Alexander Public School, and I had my little like afro and just me being me. And I remember from the moment I walked up, this girl looked at me and she was like, is that a booger in your nose? And like, that's just like a girl's way of like trying to make you feel insecure.
Mm.
it was just from, I felt like from the moment I got there were people like poking holes in how I looked and how I talked and things that were wrong with me. And I felt like I was immediately outcast from that moment. And then the 7th grade, it got worse. I started to find friends. And then I remember moments where my friends, they realized that I wasn't cool and that I was like the loser of our grade. And so they didn't want to hang out with me. And I remember my friend literally at that time told me, like, I'm not really sure where I stand yet. Cause, you know, she was new. She had popular kids who wanted to be her friend, but she liked me. And I remember just being like, okay, like I've been on my own before. You can,
Yeah.
I've been through this. But I remember how deeply it hurt. And it's so funny because she's still my best friend now to this day. And it's just kind of a childish moment type, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
we were kids. But it was just, it's one of those things like even now I'm like, yeah, my friend, like she chose me, you know, even from a young age.
Yeah.
So it just shows like the kind of person she was, that she cared more about my character and who I was from that young age and saw past, you know, she saw the way these other people treated me and how they talked about me and chose not to participate and go along with it, but rather to come beside me and like walk with me. And
Yeah.
so these are my 2 friends. And honestly, I say all the time, they're the reason I stayed alive for a long time,
Wow.
because it's because like in that whole scenario and being so independent, not telling people what was going on and how I was being bullied every single day and made fun
Yeah.
of every day. They were the only people that really knew about it, but they were also my comfort. Even though we weren't in the
Mm.
same class, like they were my comfort. They were my people that I could lean on, my people that could be like, yo, they're stupid. Don't even worry about them. My
Mm.
people that would stick up for me. So yeah, they were great. But yeah, that went on for a long time.
Yeah.
So the 8th grade, and it reached where I remember when I had this one night where I don't really know what the scenario was, but I was just in this really dark place, and I decided that this would be my last night and that would be it. And essentially I like sat, I remember I went to the kitchen, I got this knife, and I went and I got like a notebook, and I was gonna like, I decided that I was gonna I was gonna write a letter, I was gonna slit
Holy
my
shit, man.
neck, and I decided I was just gonna bleed out and sit there. And I remember I sat on the floor in my closet, I had this knife, I had this letter, and I just had a moment with myself where I'm like, am I really,
Yeah.
really gonna, like holding the pen, thinking like, what am I gonna write? What are my parents gonna think? How are they gonna feel? And all that. And it became this like, as you can imagine, an overwhelming feeling of
It's
emotion.
yeah, yeah.
And so I remember I was like, I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna take a shower. I'm gonna take a minute. I'm just gonna think. And I remember when I stepped in the shower, I bawled, I cried like I never cried before. I like fell to the floor, and I just started like praying and calling out and just like looking for something, a reason to carry on. And in that moment, I like afterwards, I eventually, I think I just went to sleep, and I woke up the next day, and I told my parents, and I was like, I remember I just came in the living room. I was like, I hate myself. That was all I said. And I was like, Mom was like, what do you mean? I'm like, I hate who I am. And I hate everyone around me, and I hate people. And then I just broke down crying. And it was my mom's first time experiencing like a mental health crisis.
Mm.
And it was something very different, and that she didn't understand at all.
Mm.
But she knew I was hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
So
was going through your mind, like the limiting beliefs you had about yourself during those dark
it came
times?
from the insecurity, you know, from like people not liking the way I looked, because
Yeah.
that, right, and then it was feeling different because of the way I looked, because I was always bigger, because my hair was bolder, my hair is messier, I'm darker than everyone, I talk different than everyone,
Yeah.
I don't know them. So it was one, this insecurity of like, I don't fit in, I don't belong, I don't look like I should. And then it's also, sorry, it's
It's
also,
okay.
yeah, it was also that side of like, because I don't fit in, I don't belong here, I'm not as good as these other kids, I'm not as smart as these other kids. And that stayed with me for a while, and it was hard to overcome in high
Yeah.
school. This was a battle I fought for a long time. Honestly, I can't even mark a date when I got it together, but I think eventually I did, and I went into
Yeah.
college strong, and I got my head back on my shoulders. But for a long time, I just felt really unworthy and unequipped, and like I wasn't good enough for people. And that feeling,
Yeah. Yeah.
it turned into anger, and that stopped me from doing so much, because I didn't want to try, because I didn't care, because I didn't want to be here, because I didn't think I deserved to be here, because I didn't think I was good enough, you know. Yeah, so those are some struggles and hardships. Those are some
Yeah.
those are
Thank
some
you for
double
sharing. Yeah. Amazing. So how did you get into events and what you're doing now and thriving and, living Lovey Reid, being Lovey Reid?
Yeah, I'll say there was a turning point for me in the 11th grade. And honestly, it was, I was still being bullied in different ways. I still didn't necessarily love who I was, but it was where it stopped going downwards and it started going upwards. And it
Yeah.
started with a math teacher actually, who really, I hate math. First of all, I hate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was someone who like saw the intellectual potential in me and saw me struggling and didn't just say like, oh, like you should just go to a lower level or whatever, right? She took the time to actually like, she just invested in me. She took time with me, helped me learn. And I think starting to see my grades up gave me a little bit of a confidence boost.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of smart, right? And it did start with like my grades and academics in school and that moment where it was like I can do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Something, right? I can write,
Yeah.
also writing poetry and Ella,
Spoken word?
yeah, writing spoken word and stuff like that, just for assignments in school that started to bring things out of me, like, okay, I have some capability. And then getting involved in like youth groups at my church, and my community started to build
Yeah.
up, and that led to a turning point where I started to belong. Not only did I start to belong, but I started to see what I was capable of, and that there were strengths in me. And it did take other people seeing that and affirming it in me, because that was the opposite of what I had for so long. Right.
Like
And
your
then,
voice finally matters. Your voice matters.
yeah, my voice matters. I matter, it makes a difference me being here on this earth. And so stuff like that, that helped with the upwards trend kind of beginning. Yeah. So how I got here, my mom, again, being a teacher, when I
Yeah.
graduated from school, she was like, you're going to get a 4-year degrry.
Yeah. Go.
You're getting a degree. And I'm like, I can't do like a 2-year program. I can't take a year off. No, you're going.
Yeah.
And so my mom always pushed me
Yeah.
academic. She believed in me and she saw something in me, and she's like, I don't care what you do, just try something, just try, right? And so, of course, like everyone in high school, I had like 50 billion things that I wanted to do.
Yeah, of course,
I have
everyone.
no idea how I ended
Yeah.
up in PR. I just did. I ended up at Centennial College in a PR program because I had this dream of like, I wanted to, I've had issues with the police and things like that. And in my mind, I was like, it started where I wanted to do public relations for the police, and I wanted to help build up a more positive police image and work in communities, and just kind of, I had this mindset that I could change the world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Of course, right? And then I also was like, I also would love to work in TV. So like, I was like, okay, PR, this seems like a good kind of general area. I can do this. I like writing. There's not a lot of math. So yeah, I tried other schools. I ended up at Centennial. Long story short, I did my 4 years. How I ended up in events, essentially getting involved on campus.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
things. It started with like going to leadership, a leadership program that Centennial College runs. I did that again. Sense of belonging hit big on the head there. Very affirming. It was a place where you're encouraged to dream and to see other things and reflect on your past and really grow, right? And so I think in my time at Centennial, I already started to find my voice. Like I was already in it. But that leadership experience helped a lot more. And that opened so many doors for me, right? I started making connections with people like Veronica Barahona, who was the event coordinator at CCSAI. I met Philip, who was the event liaison, and he became a good friend of mine. And then, yeah, so moral of the story, I like applied to be vice president of Story Arts Center, and I told Veronica this, and she was like, honestly, now getting to know you, I think you'd be way better for this event, or like suited for this events role. And
Yeah.
also she wanted to work with me, right? She loved it.
Yeah.
But she wanted to work with me. So I took her word for it, and I was like, okay. So I switched roles, and I went into this event role. It wasn't just that smooth. Like I volunteered, I did interviews, But yeah, that's how it started. I got into that role. And I started enjoying it, and again realizing that I was good at something. And yeah, like at the time, Veronica was like, had a lot on her plate, and I was like, hey, can I do more?
Yeah.
It started as that, like, what more can I do? What more? How else can I help? And so she started giving me more important tasks and started teaching me about security and risk management and all these different sort of things. And, you know, as time goes on, she eventually, you know, moved into a different role at the college. That position became available. I had graduated, like the timing was just
I know.
graduated. And yeah, so it's not as simple as I ended up in the role. I actually ran for president that year. I ran an entire campaign, and this is me living in my like newfound confidence, putting my heart on the line publicly. I still call this my most public failure. I ran an incredible campaign.
I know you did. I know you did.
I know. I was like, you can ask. I ran an incredible campaign, and you can tell I worked hard and I invested time, and it was so great. And I was so faithful and hopeful. And then I got that phone call that I didn't win, and I was crushed, crushed, devastated, embarrassed. I felt like disgusting. It was a disgusting feeling that day. I remember that night, and it was just terrible. I hated it. And it took me a while to come around, but yeah, I ended up applying to this role. Months late, like I was working at this call center in Oshawa, and I was working at a bar at night, and like I was just doing like just a bunch of odd jobs that I didn't really like, and applying to other full-time jobs and trying to figure out my life, right? So this public failure, I'm doing a bunch of nonsense. So yeah, I apply to the event coordinator role, interview, I get a no. I got denied, didn't get the job. Boom, crushed again.
Wow.
Yeah, another failure. I didn't get the job. And then someone at the student association reached out to me, and they're like, hey, I see your potential, but there's some areas that need to be refined. And they very realistically kind of help identify my weaknesses and show me where I can improve. So I took some online courses. You know, I just did different things. And then I eventually had the opportunity to interview for the role again, like a month later. And then I got the job, you know?
Woo!
So that's on resilience, you know?
Yeah, that just shows.
Yeah, so I got the job. I did that. Similar scenario with Rise, you know, got involved in freelance things, connecting with other people. And, you know, here we
are. Here we are. Here we are. Amazing. Amazing. Well, and to end off our segment, what would you say being limitless or having that mindset means to you?
Yeah, to me, being limitless or what does having a limitless mindset mean to me? Honestly, it means like you can't give up. That persistence, that strength has to be found within you, even in the face of adversity. Even like I believe that joy can coexist with sadness and with pain and with doubt and whatever. And even along with all those negative emotions, so can passion exist, and so can hard work. And that's that limitless mindset of just keep going, just keep trying. You know, even like for me, like in terms of living, I had to have that mindset of just keep trying.
Yeah.
Taking another day, right? And so I think that's the limitless mindset, is thinking, you know, I can do this. I can take this chance, and not being afraid to fail. My biggest failures have worked out in my favor continuously every single time, and I'm positive they will continue to. Because if you don't reach that edge of potential failure, if you don't shoot that far and try something that you could completely fail at, you're never going to reach your full potential. And so constantly live on the edge of what you think that you are capable of. Do your very best and keep trying. Even if folks are naysayers and you don't know what to do, just try, just do, keep going, and don't give up. And also, it's okay to take a break. Taking a break and changing your mind is different from giving up. Like if something really isn't working for you, like recognize that. But there's always a way. There's a way to achieve different things. There's a different way to get a degree. You know, you don't have to go the same route that everyone takes. Your route can look like this. But that's a limitless mindset, is that even if point A to B doesn't work, maybe you have to do a whole zigzag, but you can get there. You know, maybe it takes you 8 years to complete a 4-year program, but guess what? You did it. And at the end of the day, you stuck it out, right? And not everyone can say that they would do that or have done that. So that's a limitless mindset. I don't know how to summarize that, but yeah, don't give up. Live on the edge of your abilities.
That's okay. Amazing. And where can our peeps find you?
Yeah, you can find me on the Instagrams at Life with Lovey _. You can actually find me everywhere at Life with Lovey _. I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, all the things. But yeah, that's me.
Thank you so
That's it.
much,
Thanks
Lovey.
for
Thank you so much.
having me, Evan.
Always in the edge of your own capabilities with Lovey Reid.